Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Precious Metals Summit is brought to you by Nucor Gold.
Are junior gold stocks struggling or on the verge of breaking out? This is Paul Harris for Kitco Mining at the 2024 Precious Metals Summit in Beaver Creek in Colorado. Joining me today to answer this question is Luc tenHave, founder of golddiscovery.com. Luc, welcome back to Kitco.
Yeah, happy to be back.
Now, gold is at $2,500 per ounce, and today it's breaking out even higher, and we're seeing a lot of good prints on the screen. A lot of companies are up 5%, some are even up 10%. Both in gold and in silver. Is this the start of the breakout that has been long anticipated?
Well, of course you can never say that with certainty, but I was just doing some quick, because we just saw all the stocks going up, not even at the open I think, a little bit later. And B2 Gold, for example, is doing this 9th best day in 9 years. So it had 9 better days than today so far. And all those days were in 2016, bull market, and 2020. So, yeah, that's a good hint. I've studied how bull markets start, and they often start very rapidly, like with a big day. Then you get a couple of difficult days, and people are confused. People don't really see it yet, because people still are skeptical. And then you get another good day, and so I think it's important to monitor. We will get some volatility, I think, in the coming days. And if you get another day like this, where these big companies go up 5%, 10%, it's typically a bit irregular. Until people realize after a month, oh wow, maybe this is it. So I think it's something to look for, yeah.
One thing I've noticed looking at the charts today is the spread and the diversity of companies that are responding to the price. You mentioned some of the big gold companies, but the intermediate producers, a lot of the juniors and the silver companies, a lot of them are getting that 5 to 10% share price increase today. Are we in the danger of perhaps reading too much into that?
Well, I think a lot of big companies already did quite well since February. And it doesn't feel that way. I think most people, if you talk to most people, they still feel bad about the market. Most portfolios are still down. So I think you first want to see these big companies continuing their move, and maybe having days like this where stocks go up 5%, some 8 or 9 or 10%. And then you hope that things are trickling down. And at some point, it almost has to happen because these juniors are not moving yet. Today I see some juniors, especially with the big backing, big names. Those companies also start moving. So it has all the signs of an early... September is not a typical month for this to happen. But maybe towards November or December, you see a number of these days, and maybe people can call this the start of a new bull. Of course, you can qualify as a bull since 2016, but I think we had 2 or 3 bad years. So let's just say the restart of the bull.
We are at a mining investment conference, but investors still seem to be reticent to invest in mining stocks. You touched on the fact that a number of companies have had pretty good share price gains today, up to 100%. Obviously very attractive, but it still seems the sector is struggling to attract investors.
And it makes sense. We don't do a good job in also highlighting the companies that do well, because if you look at the last year, of the 2,000 or 3,000 mining companies in the world, there's only maybe 100 or 200 who did well, even green, and the rest is just red. And most of them are 80% down. So how can you attract, new people? I think first of all by highlighting the winners. I mean, what do you have to look for? And typically if you're a small company, access to capital is the first thing. You can have an amazing project, but if nobody realizes that, and you cannot really put the money to it to show it, then you're just stuck. So I think, you need the market to improve for money to become available and for companies to do their work. And in the meantime, only the companies with big backers can really show off. And that's why you see Montage going up, Fireweed doing well, some of these Pierre Lassonde companies doing well. And if this market, like if today is the first day of a new bull market, then you will slowly see all these smaller companies also go up and financing becomes easier again.
I think that's one of the interesting things where we are at the moment. Gold's at $2,500, historically high levels. And yet it still seems to be very, very difficult for a lot of the junior explorers to raise funds. Now, you with golddiscovery.com, you tend to focus on the discovery stage, the very early stage explorers. And speaking with some of those companies here, the window for financing is still very firmly shut. How is that going to play out? How does that affect your decision making as an investor?
It's extremely important to think about not just how amazing something could be. I mean, you listen to a lot of stories and you think, oh wow, amazing story, but can they actually finance? And as I said, so far only the companies that had somebody like Eric Sprott, Pierre Lassonde, Rob McEwen, or other groups that can really provide capital, those have been doing well, and almost anyone else didn't do well. And I think that's also opportunity. That's why you get a bit more M&A and mergers, which is painful because a lot of people have been waiting for a long time, and then they are taking over right now at the absolute bottom, at least a bottom in 3 years' time. So when I invest, I look for all these different things, especially like I'm not really a project-focused person. I first of all look at the capital structure. Are the insiders incentivized? Are they still buying? I mean, if they are not buying and they have a good salary, why should I be buying? Of course, project is important, but who's going to finance them? And if they really have to struggle to get money, almost always after 4 months, the investors sell the stock again because they get free warrants and they just wait. And for them, it's a bet. It's almost like casino money. So you want to have investors with long-term vision and where you can really trust, like, okay, the money's coming in and it's not going out in 4 months' time when the halt is coming off or the trading halt. So, yeah, I think capital is most important when you go for these early stage companies, because if they don't have access to it, it's almost impossible for the stock to go up.
One of the conversations I've had several times here, which I haven't had in the past, is about marketing and companies' ability to market themselves. I mean, we've heard lots of stories over the years about promotion and over promotion, but marketing, I would say, is something very different. And it does seem a lot of companies are very bad at it. Companies here, most of them are doing things the same way they've done them for years. The only difference being now that the PowerPoint, the corporate presentation handout is printed in color and double-sided rather than black and white and single-sided. You obviously use technology as part of your due diligence and search process. It does seem that in terms of the marketing and presentation of the companies, they're very deficient in terms of technology. There's probably things they could be doing better. And certainly companies want to attract a younger audience. The younger audience is obviously very technology savvy and used to accessing information using screens and other things. What could the issuers be doing differently? Could they be doing better?
Yeah, and I still think even if technology improves and even if companies embrace that, mining and exploration is still a very capital-intensive business. So almost no matter how good your presentation is, it goes back to capital, access to capital. And so to convince someone to back you, then of course you have to come up with a good story, and you have to have a network. And my due diligence is showing that there's only 3 reasons right now a stock could go up. It's a discovery, which is very rare. It is big names coming in or capital providers coming in, and sometimes big projects that indeed can be promoted because they have the right promotion behind them, but they are often perceived as, oh, they're just running a stock up and whatever they are going to do. So technology, I think, is important, but it's not going to completely change this from bear market to bull market. It's just helpful for companies to present their story. But in the end, you need young people who have a lot of energy combined with senior people who have network experience, because without it, even with the best presentation, I wouldn't buy it. Companies need to show how they are going to move their project forward and what they can show to the market in a year from now.
Okay, we're at the Precious Metals Summit here in Beaver Creek. I imagine you've had a lot of meetings. What are some of the things you've been hearing? What are some of the key takeaways?
Well, what I noticed is that I have a screen, so I only talk to companies that fit my criteria. So after 2,000 companies, there are only 300 companies left. And of those 300, I meet a number of companies, and I've been quite impressed with some of them. And the danger always is when you are listening to them, and you think, wow, there's always sort of a cliffhanger. So we've done this, and this. But in the last hole, we saw a little bit of this at the end of the hole, and we're going to continue this. And that's dangerous also for investors, because you have to be careful that trick, and that's not only a trick, they probably are saying the truth, but it's also a little bit of a cliffhanger, like, if you want to know what's in that hole, if we drill it a bit deeper, then you should buy right now because the assays are coming in 2 months. So you have to be very careful. These conferences are very important, I think, because you need to meet the people, know who are running the companies. And the conference is very dangerous because sometimes I get a sense like I need to own this. And I think you always should wait for a week and think about it properly if this is really a good investment strategy. But it is a good conference and really with high quality companies. I didn't have one meeting where I was really disappointed and came away like, wow, what a bad company. And of course, there's varying degrees of how impressed I was. No, certainly crucial for people to go to these things and meet these companies.
Is there anything that's perhaps really caught your eye or surprised, positively or negatively?
From a company point of view?
Yeah.
What I don't like is some companies, and again, it comes back to raising capital. Some companies have so many warrants outstanding. They are trading at 10 cents, for example, have 100 million shares out, and they have 50 million warrants sitting 20 or 30% above the price. And that company is simply not going above that warrant price. And you see it quite a bit. Raising money is so difficult that I can imagine at some point the company has to make a decision, and if the capital provider says, I want a warrant, otherwise you're not getting my money, you have to make a decision. For me as an investor, I almost know for sure, almost 100% sure, that that company is not going over that price unless we get a really big bull market, because then suddenly things can go. In a sort of bear market or sideways market, you need a clean capital structure and people who understand that. So you don't only need a good geologist and somebody who can explain it. You also you need a strategist thinking about how are we going to get this stock from where we are right now to a higher level, even if we may not hit that big drill hole, because only 1% of the companies will do that. But everybody still has to, convince investors to buy the stock if you think it's a good stock. So capital structure, warrants, that's what I think a lot of companies still do wrong. But I'm quite impressed with the geology and the teams. When they tell a story, I sometimes get a sense like, I want to own this, I want to buy this. And again, that's a bit dangerous. You have to think about it a bit longer, but they are doing good work, at least the companies I talked to these days.
I want to add on to the end of that, but in a difficult financing situation, in addition to warrants, the warrant term gets longer and longer. In the past year, I've seen up to 4 years, which if the thesis is that the share price isn't going to go above the warrant strike price, you're going to be in that situation for 2, 3, 4 years.
Unless, of course, you get 1 or 2 big investors and you know that they will support the company for many years. And if they are the ones owning the warrant and they can bring the company from being completely stuck to a new position, well, maybe that's good. Then 1 or 2 entities own it. They have to even report when they sell or buy. So then at least you know as an investor what to expect. But if there are 100 people coming in the financing and they all get warrants, then you just know, if you own something that you like, but if you sell it and you still have 2 or 3 years of upside, then it's just almost like a bet. You place a bit of money in, after 4 months you take it out, and it's a way easier decision to sell that stock. If I have a stock where I think, they may make a discovery, but I don't have any warrants, then the decision becomes more difficult. And the company profits from that because the investor will most likely not sell because he wants to wait for that moment. But if you have the warrant, you just sell and you can wait for that moment, the drill result or whatever you're waiting for free. So that's why I say, if you can do it without warrants, do it without. I even screen for them, and there's very few companies who can do it or want to do it.
Let's talk a little bit about M&A. It's one of the talking points here. It's one of the buzz points here. The summer's seen quite a few transactions, meaningful transactions, arguably kicked off with BHP and Philo, more recently First Majestic Silver and Gatos. This week, AngloGold Ashanti and Centamin, and of course, Goldfields and Osisko Mining. Is this heralding in a new age of M&A?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's more coming. I always have a lot of people say it's good for the industry that M&A happens because G&A goes down. You can run several projects from one office and you don't need 10 offices to run those projects. I agree to that, but on the other hand, if you look at Osisko, for example, everybody, I think, applauds that deal. It's a $4.5 billion deal, I think, or whatever numbers they put on it. They have done an amazing job building the project. But if you bought Osisko at the absolute low point of the last 4 or 5 years, you only have a double. And in this business, you cannot take all these risks because there's so many risks to just make one double. Then you can better invest in Google or Apple. So I think M&A is good, Look at Reunion. I mean, they made a discovery, went 10x, and then are taken over and get a liquidity event. That's good M&A. And Cisco is a good company. They are real people. And even they, with so much experience, couldn't get the stock up more than 100% unless you bought in 2015 when they created the company. Between 2016 and the takeover, it was just a bit of roller coaster, up and down, up and down. But even from the bottom to the top, it's about 100%. And in my opinion, you cannot invest for 100% gains in this business. You need to get in successful stories like this, you need to be able to get a multi-bagger. Otherwise, it will never solve all the losers you have in your portfolio.
Is there a deal out there that you think should happen, that you'd like to see happen, if you could put two companies together?
Well, the very obvious one is G2 Goldfields. It's next to Reunion. Reunion is just taken over. Anglo is buying in the market. Anglo is doing the financings. I would be very surprised that company is not taken over in 6 months, maybe a year, but it's almost impossible for me to see that company not being acquired by someone. So that's one is very logical. In Finland with Rupert and Orion and Agnico, that's a situation that will probably at some point come to consolidation. I mean, in the end, it's the best projects are going to be taken over, except maybe for a couple of Australian companies, because they are the only ones who sometimes really bring it forward themselves. In Canada, you almost don't see that anymore. First Quantum was a 50-cent stock, a $50 million stock in 2001, and completely made it to this completely big company after 24 years. You don't see that often anymore, that companies really bring it from the beginning to the end. So I think there's going to be way more M&A, probably a couple of majors merging with each other, and but hopefully also good deals for companies like G2.
Excellent. Okay, so how do you think the rest of the year is going to play out in the gold space?
Well, everybody has an opinion, and everybody is, I think, gambling a little bit about what the price is going to do. But based on today's action and based on what happened since February, my impression is that the market is slowly building. You don't really feel it yet, but it's a bit comparable to 2000 and 2001, where you didn't get that ultimate shot up within half a year. All the stocks are up 5-6x. 2016 was a year like that. 2020 was a year like that. I think it's better that this time it's going a little bit slower, because you don't get this 6-month window and then everybody leaves again. But hopefully it's going to be this 2001, 2012 period where you get sustained gains over, but not these big spikes, because then people come and leave within 6 months again. And that's what I hope for and maybe think will happen.
Hopefully some better days to come.
For sure.
Excellent. Well, Luc tenHave, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks again.
And we have a lot more to come from the 2024 Precious Metals Summit here from Beaver Creek in Colorado. So hit that subscribe button to get access to all the videos. I'm Paul Harris, and this is Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Precious Metals Summit is brought to you by New Core Gold.